Welcome to the Voice of Business with Nicholas Jones here. And as a shameless plug here right at the beginning, since it is my radio show, I want you to head over to voiceofbusiness.com. And you can find a little bit more about me as well as a history of all of the shows that we have had every Saturday morning. Today I have with me Bruce DeLaney. He has Rediscovered Books here in Boise as well as one in Caldwell. And he also recently just acquired another bookstore about 2 years ago?
About 2 years ago,
Once and Future Books. And so we're going to have a little interesting story about his growth and kind of the decisions that he's made in his life. In fact, actually, I own a business right now that Bruce actually owned, all about games.
At one point, I owned that with a partner.
With a partner.
And now you own the downtown location.
Now I own the downtown location.
Laura is my wife and business partner, opened that store and did everything from doing the original painting to all the original lease negotiations, and we're just super happy with what you've done with it since you've taken it over.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually recently, just in the last 2 months, actually painted over that layer of paint you're talking about. So Bruce, what we want to do is so the fun thing about this, guys, is that Bruce DeLaney is another husband and wife team. So your wife's name is Laura, and they've been in the business together for...
So we started talking about doing the business together while I was still at Micron and Laura was an elementary school music teacher in 2003. And we opened our doors in September of 2006. Our original store was actually up on the bench, up in the Overland Park Shopping Center, next to the movie theater there. And we were there for 4 years. And then we moved downtown to Downtown Boise, to our present location. And when you have a bookstore, being in the downtown of wherever you are is like being a baseball player and playing in Yankee Stadium. You don't necessarily start out there, but that is your ultimate goal, is to be in the best place for your business. And for an independent bookstore, that is to be in the center of downtown in a walking district, and it is why we are in downtown Boise, and it is why when we were looking for a place in the West Valley, we settled in Indian Creek in Caldwell because of all the work that they have done to make that a community center and to really bring in indie businesses and make it a good walking area.
And so just for everyone who's interested, you have your location at downtown right at the corner of 8th and Idaho, right?
It is, in our opinion, the best place we could be for an independent bookstore in all of Boise. We love being there.
It's amazing. And it's a fantastic story. Like the way it looks and have everything outlaid, I love it. So let's talk real quick about... In 2003 is when you and Laura both decided, hey, let's maybe go down this path. 3 years later, you're opening the store. So there's a lot of people who are wanting to start businesses that can be a husband, wife, or a partner type of team, and took you 3 years. So what was the process? What did that 3-year process look like for you guys?
So the first thing was deciding that we wanted to actually be in business. There's a lot of work involved in just being business. Even before we knew we wanted to do a bookstore, we had to decide we wanted to be in business, and we wanted to be in business together. Choosing your business partner is very important. I could not have a better business partner, in any way. Laura is fantastic. She's smart. She's got a real touch for people, and we complement each other very well, which is important in business partners. So once we decided that we wanted to do something together, we started looking at what we loved. And very quickly we realized that when we traveled, we went to bookstores. We'd go to Portland, we'd go to Powell's. We'd go to Denver, and we'd go to Tattered Cover. Even when we visited my parents in Vermont, we'd go to Galaxy Books in Hardwick, which is this tiny little bookstore that's fantastic, that you never would get to in Vermont if you didn't know where it was. But if you do, you visit every time. And we looked around Boise, and at the time, we had a Borders, we had a Barnes & Noble, we had the Hastings, we had Vista Book Gallery. But there really wasn't that kind of bookstore that we wanted to visit. So we're like, let's see if we can do that. The very next thing we did is we joined our national trade organization. For most businesses, there is a national organization for businesses like whatever it is that you're going to want to do. And in our case, it's the American Booksellers Association and the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association. And that allowed us access to talk to people who already did what we wanted to do and get advice. There's only so much advice you can get from reading business books. If you want to open a restaurant and haven't talked to anybody who runs a restaurant, you haven't done your due diligence, because the books aren't going to tell you everything that you need to know. They're not going to give you the good ideas, and they're certainly not going to say, boy, I wish I hadn't done this. If I had to do it all over again, what would I do differently? And that meant we could sit down with people at Powell's. We could sit down with people at Tattered Cover. We could sit down with people, at Third Place and get advice. And then whether or not you follow it is up to you, because every business that you start is going to be a reflection in some way of who you are and what you want to accomplish.
So I like what you're talking about. Where you joined the trade organization, right? So step one, and then step two, you went and talked with other trade organizations.
We spent 2 years basically traveling to other people's bookstores, talking to the employees, talking to the customers, talking to the owners, and trying to take what we could out of that. Now, having said that, you're going to make mistakes. There are things that if we were doing it all over again, we would do differently, that you don't know until you start. Again, because every environment is different, every town is different. And you just look around downtown Boise. There's how many coffee shops, and they're all a little bit different, and they all specialize in a little bit different things. And they're all going to say that the way they do it is the best way to do it. And everyone has their favorite coffee shop, whether it's Dawson Taylor's or Alia's or Dutch Brothers. Everyone has their favorite.
And so the big question is, what's your specialty? Rediscovered Books. What makes you the best?
If you look at it, it is because the fact when you walk into our store, you're looking at a curated selection of books. Every book is there because someone on staff has said, I think this is a great book to have. And you have people who can talk to you about those books. If you look at our kind of our tagline, where books and people meet, it really is. It's about getting people to come in and find the right books for them, the thing that they're looking for at that moment, whether it's a great history of 19th century Europe, or a fun beach read, a great book for my child who doesn't normally like reading, or we're getting this one a lot. I'm transitioning from teen books to adult literature. What do you recommend I read? And you talk to the people. We have the time to actually do that. Find out what is it about the books that they love. Try to find something else that they're going to love just as much.
Now, you mentioned Borders Books and a couple other bookstores that we had here in Idaho. There was a lot.
There was a lot.
And right now, there's not a lot. It kind of went away. How did you weather the storm?
Well, there's a couple things to realize. When we moved to Idaho, I was hired by Micron in 1990, and we moved out from Cleveland, where we went to college. There were 13 used bookstores and I think 9 new bookstores. There was Coyote and Mr. Twain. There was Little Professor. There was the Bookshelf. There was the Bookshop downtown. And so we've gone through a number of transitions. It wasn't falling off a cliff. At some point, Borders and Barnes & Noble and Hastings came to town, and some of those smaller stores closed. And then, there's the rise of online retail, which everyone who is in a retail business deals with. We have survived by taking care of our customers. We have a great amount of customer loyalty. Our customers come back and have relationships with the booksellers. We have people come in and they say, hey, I was here 6 months ago and Hannah recommended something. Is she here? I want to talk to her about what I should be reading next.
Good. So you're establishing relationships.
All business is about relationships ultimately. And we are in a nice situation is we get to be kind of open and honest about it. We want to talk to you about books. And we have people who everyone who walks in our door is there because a bookstore appeals to them. The idea of a bookstore appeals to them. A lot of people come in not knowing that they want to talk to the staff about books because it's it's not a normal experience in American business anymore necessarily to walk in and find someone who is working in that retail job who truly loves and is knowledgeable about what they're doing. And I think it's more common than people think, but you'd be surprised how many times you say, "Can I help you?" and you get, "No, I'm just browsing." Mm-hmm. And then it's up to us to convince that person that it is worth talking to us about the books, worth having that relationship with us that's going to bring them back again and again.
Good. So you had All About Games, right? So originally, and you made the decision
not originally. So
oh yeah, correct. So you came in.
So about 6 months after we opened the bookstore, I was actually friends with Ken and Peter and Joel. I played games with them, and they were in a situation where Joel and Peter wanted to move on for various reasons. And they approached me and they said, "Hey, we know you run a business anyway. We know you love games. Are you interested in buying, half ownership in this business?" And
so we're going to put a pause right there. We're going to go to a commercial break real quick, and we're going to come back and talk. So you're listening to The Voice of Business with Nicholas Jones, interviewing Bruce DeLaney about his business, Rediscovered Books. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, welcome back to The Voice of Business. This is Nicholas Jones. Again, you can head over to voiceofbusiness.com and read and listen to all of our podcasts. And right now I'm here with Bruce DeLaney from Rediscovered Books, and we're talking about a previous business that he had owned that I bought into called All About Games, and I've actually purchased and now own the downtown store. Let's resume. So they had approached you.
So
and said
they approached me, and they effectively, you hear this said all the time. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and so I bought half ownership, and it meant that Laura and I had to decide how we were now going to run our two businesses, and there were a lot of synergies. And one of the things that was nice is you can have one bookkeeper for the two businesses. You can have, there's a lot of things that you can share between two businesses that are similar businesses, and having two retail businesses, it meant that. But after we had run it for a number of years, we were looking at, we'd since moved the bookstore from Overland Park to downtown, and we had looked at what the potential futures for the bookstore and the game store were, and we realized that in order for us to move things to the next level, we had to make a commitment to what we were doing. And if we were going to make that commitment to the bookstore and the game store, it was going to mean some drastic changes to the way that the two businesses ran. And at the time, I sat down with my partner, Ken, and offered to buy him out. I said, if we're going to do all of this work, it's going to mean basically bringing the two businesses closer together. And really the three options were bring Ken in as a partner at the bookstore, which we were not interested in doing, buy Ken out and own both businesses, or sell the business to Ken, because Ken had an interest in running that business and was really invested in it. And after having that discussion, we decided that the best of those three options was to have him buy my half of the business, and then he ran it for a while, and then you became involved in it, and that's not really my story to tell.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that Ken did a lot of things that I really enjoyed working with, and we got to the point too where I had a similar situation where it was like, hey, I'm the same boat where I realized that, hey, I need a focus, I need to dial it in here, and in order to do that, I had to merge things.
One of the things about owning your own business is there's the constant change. There's a constant, you have to stay ahead of things. You can't sit back on your laurels and say, last year was great financially, and so I'm going to do everything the same. If you're truly going to be successful, I think you constantly have to be looking for improvements that you can make in what you're doing. And sometimes that brings you to uncomfortable choices.
And difficult ones.
And difficult choices.
And now I'm glad you sold out, because I've enjoyed owning it. It's been fun. It's been a fun little thing to dally in.
It's a fun business. I mean, we still play a lot of board games at home. We do a lot of puzzles at home. I still love what All About Games does. I'm just now viewing it from the outside rather than from the inside.
And have you identified a specific value proposition for your business? I've got where I'm going with this. So a value proposition, why people come and buy your books? Do you know why people come and buy your books?
I do. I mean, we really feel it is because they can feel confident if they find it on our shelves that it's worth their money. And let me kind of explain that a little bit in terms of the difference between a store like ours and a store like Barnes & Noble and a store like online shopping. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Barnes & Noble in Boise is roughly 10 times the size of our store and therefore roughly has 10 times the amount of things. But I feel that we have 30,000 books in the store, and if I make them the 30,000 best books that are there, then I'm not sure how much more value you gain by bringing in the 5,000 next books. That tail is there, but in any retail business, the vast amount of your sales come in the top tier items. And by having a tightly curated set of great books, it means that you can come in, and if you pick up a history book on our shelf or a cookbook on our shelf or a kid's book on our shelf, you can feel confident that it's a great choice in that, because we have people who love that, and we constantly are evaluating what we have on our shelves.
And the difficulty about a podcast is that we can't put up a PowerPoint
or a picture.
And say, here's a picture as an example. So we have to kind of get as colorful as we can with the descriptions. So those of you who own a business are often familiar with a nominal distribution, where the majority of it's going to be of what you sell is going to be right in the middle, and then you're going to have some stuff that you don't sell very much. Maybe it brings in a lot of money, but you don't sell very much, and then there's stuff that you don't sell that's on the other side. So what Bruce is talking about is that when he talks about those 30,000 books that the most people buy, I do that in my businesses. Whether I have in my burger joint I have 9 burgers that it's like, here's what I sell. At my game store I have 15 to 20,000 games that the most people buy. With the books, when you're upping that $30,000 number as there's attrition on whatever books you're not selling or putting on discounts, how do you decide what those are going to be when new books are coming out? Is it just whatever marketing?
I spend a lot of time reading, obviously. It's one of the joys of my job that at the end of my day I can go home and I can sit in a chair with a cup of tea and a book and read it. And I read a lot of books that aren't released yet. I'm reading things that are getting published in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, and so is my entire staff. So I have up to 20 employees at any one time, and they're all voracious readers. That's why you work in a bookstore.
It is indeed.
And so I get feedback. Hannah will come to me and say, I read this teen book, and it's amazing. The characters are great. The setting is great. All the things that people love in books. And when you bring somebody on at the bookstore, you talk to them about the windows into books. That some people read books because they love the characters. Some people read Jane Austen is a great example. You read Jane Austen because you love the characters that she makes. Some people read books because they love the setting. This book takes me to Venice. This book takes me to Mars. Some people read books because they're trying to learn something. We're seeing a huge resurgence now or uptick in people who are reading books like Stamped from the Beginning. In every election cycle, we typically get every candidate on either side of the political party will have a book. And it's always interesting because we bring in everybody's books, and then as people drop out of the presidential election cycle, suddenly no one's interested in their book anymore, and you send that back. One of the neat things about the book business is we buy our products typically returnable. So if
that is a nice little fun
it is a fun little fact that the reason that I can bring in 20 copies of the John Bolton book is if I have 20 people who want it, great, I've got them. If I have 0 people who want them, eventually I send them back to Simon & Schuster, and they give me credit towards buying a different book. I don't get my money back, but
you get credit for it.
I get to put that into performing inventory, and it means that we have our margin is not as good as it was in games. But I bet you would give up 4 or 5 points of margin to be able to send things back and say, we brought in Bunny Kingdom because I thought we could sell it, and we can't, so I'd like to trade those for Settlers of Catan.
Yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat.
And when you're talking about how do you do that, it's probably very similar to how you decide on your menu. You have 9 burgers, you said, that are typical, but I bet that you're constantly thinking, I'm going to put this 10th burger on the menu, and if people love it, it gets a permanent place. And when it gets a permanent place, my least popular of those other 9 burgers is going to be on the chopping block.
Yep.
That's how business works. There are books that I personally love, that I personally have in my collection, that I do not have in my store because for whatever reason, my customers don't love them, and most importantly, my customers are not willing to give me money so they can take that book home.
And if you don't make money, then you don't have books for them to buy in the future, and they're all stuck with Amazon.
Then you should really be working at the library, and we love our libraries. It's a question we get a lot. How do you interact with people who are discounters? What I tell them is, we are 4 blocks away from someone who gives away what I sell. And we support the library in Boise 100% because they love the same things that we love. When Borders closed, it was really hard for us because even though they were a competitor, I knew a lot of people who worked at Borders, and ultimately they loved books and we love books. And it's sad to see someone else who has invested in what you love, for whatever reason, not being able to make it.
One of the key things about business is variety. Mm-hmm. When there's variety, you actually have sometimes a larger sell uptick. When Borders left, did you see an uptick or a kind of a downtick because the variety disappeared?
We saw a little bit of an uptick. I'll give you a great example. For a long time in Nampa, Idaho, there were 3 really large used bookstores. There was Yesteryear Shop, Toys Sold Tales, and Book Exchange. And I knew people who probably would not have driven to Nampa to shop at any one of those stores, but would drive to shop at all 3 of those stores. And when we moved downtown, Trip Taylor was over on 10th Street. And initially, I'm not sure how happy he was that we were moving downtown until he realized that people now were coming to downtown Boise to buy books from both of us. Because there's 300,000 books a year published. You can't have everything in your store. And one of the nice things about the bookstore is that variety of what you have versus what somebody else has means that it's possible to shop at both. Just like you're going to come downtown to eat, and maybe you'll go to Good Burger, maybe you'll go to Fork, maybe you'll go to Bitter Creek, maybe you'll go to Bar Guernica.
The variety, but it gives you an option to go down. And so we're gonna come back in just a second. Mm-hmm. We're gonna go to a quick commercial break. You're listening to The Voice of Business with Nicholas Jones. I'm interviewing Bruce DeLaney at Rediscovered Books. Welcome back to The Voice of Business. I hope you're having a wonderful Saturday morning. Please remember that you can head over to voiceofbusiness.com to look up at any of our past episodes that we've had here on this radio station. And Bruce, we were talking about some of the variety, how variety can sometimes be a benefit. People come down, they go to all 3 of the bookstores. Mm-hmm. And so when Borders closed, you actually had a slight uptick, which is actually good. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's kind of scary in this environment because if every food business is closed down, I mean, not everybody wants a burger every day.
No, and you probably shouldn't eat a burger every day.
No, that would not be healthy. So when people go downtown, they'll go downtown because there is variety. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want. And so one of the things that I've really enjoyed about you is, my game store is, just a couple doors down the mm-hmm. way. You actually have put bag stuffers in from my game store and done a bunch of other stuff because you were ahead of the curve. You had 5,000 plus emails that you could send out to people, and I didn't have that because I had just started getting going. But you helped me out, and I really appreciated it because if everybody succeeds, then you can be successful. If everybody starts closing down on that street, the variety goes away.
And again, it's what you're trying to convince people to do first is come to downtown Boise or to come to Indian Creek in Caldwell. And then once you're there, I have the opportunity to have you walk by my store and say, ooh, that's interesting. I'm going to go in. But it doesn't initially matter if they came down because they're planning on going to my store or your store or Artisan Optics or Dragonfly or just to get a cup of coffee at Dawson Taylor. It's getting them there. And I think, again, that's something that we looked at when we were looking at our location in Caldwell, is being in downtown Boise has taught us that you're not on an island as a business. You have to look at the businesses around you and say, am I going to appeal to the same type of customers as these other businesses do? Am I going to be able to share customers with All About Games? Am I going to be able to share customers with Title IX? And we've done a lot. Again, every year, not this year, but every year normally we do an event in the summer around the Where's Waldo books, where we will take little cardboard Waldo cutouts and send them to 30 different businesses downtown, and then give out a bingo card that's got all the businesses on it. And the idea is you go around to all the businesses, and they've hidden the Waldos in their business, and you spend time in their business finding the Waldo. And then when you fill it all out, you come back and every business donates a prize. It's been hugely popular. We've given out thousands of these bingo cards every year. And it's good for all of us.
I like that.
Because it means that someone who wasn't planning on going into your store or the pet food store or making it all the way over to the record exchange. And it's funny, the record exchange is just a couple of blocks away, but sometimes people are like, "Oh God, it's so far."
Yeah, suddenly, we get locked in our little bubbles.
We get locked in our little bubbles, but it means while they were walking to the record exchange, maybe they passed by Good Burger, maybe they passed by Maven, maybe they passed by Guru Donuts. They passed by businesses that they otherwise wouldn't have passed by, and it means maybe they walk into those businesses, and ultimately that's good for us. Maybe they remember that business was there, and on that Saturday morning, like, well, we're going to go downtown because Guru Donuts sounds like a great place to get donuts, and while we're there, we're going to go to the bookstore.
And one of the things that we talked about, specifically about the benefit that you bring, is an experience. People come in. You can buy things online while you're on your toilet and don't have to worry about it, but you don't get the conversation. Well, so one of the benefits that you're bringing is experience.
And one of the other things we're bringing is browsability, because online shopping is great if you know exactly what it is that you want. I want this kind of pair of socks, but honestly, browsing online is not a great way to find things that you didn't know you wanted. And a lot of our business is that serendipity of, I came in to get the thing that I wanted. And by the way you build your displays, by the choices that you have, by listening to a conversation that you were having with a different customer, I didn't realize I needed to read Prior of the Orange Tree. But after hearing you describe it to somebody else, I went over and picked it up and maybe looked at something else on that display. I've forgotten that my niece had a birthday coming up and that a picture book would make a great present until I was here. And online shopping
went, oh, hey.
And online shopping can't really replicate that. It can't replicate those interactions.
Exactly. And speaking about employees, when they hear the discussion, in my company, I have a very bottom-up type of philosophy. The reason is because I love it when an employee comes to me and says, by the way, Nicholas, you're making a mistake. Or by the way, you're not doing the right thing. Sarah, for example, in my game store, she'll say, hey, we need to buy this game. Why don't we have it? And then we buy it and we sell it because she knows games. Like, that's her thing. She lives it, breathes it, and she loves it. And you're talking about a lot of your employees. They live, breathe, and everything books. Have you have a conscious approach in that type of philosophy as well?
Of course. Again, I think that any business, Laura and I run the business, but we are not the business. Without our employees, we would be nothing. Yeah. And without the ability to have our employees feeling comfortable coming to us and saying, we think you need to do this, we'd like to try this. I mean, your employees are going to be the source of all of your best ideas, because no matter how smart you are, you're only one brain. Your employees talk about running the business when you're not there. You don't think that they do, but they do. They talk about, wouldn't it be nice if we had a display of this? Or wouldn't it be nice if we ran a special on that, or didn't run a special on this, or had this kind of cards? Because they are the ones who have that day in and day out first touch with the customer. The customer does not come and talk to me while I'm in the back, writing paychecks and doing things. They talk to my staff. And so having a staff that feels comfortable talking to you, and most importantly, having a staff that is comfortable telling you that they think you're making a mistake. Because if all the people who work in your business who love your business, and you hope you have a staff that loves your business, come to you and say, we think that this is a mistake, and you don't listen, then any problems that happen are on you, because they tried. Yeah.
The ability for a business to establish autonomy for their employees and that level of trust where they can come to you and say, hey, I made a mistake, or hey, I think you're making a mistake is vital. And so within my business, I have a thing that where I say, if you lie, you're done. Like it's just, that's it. But if you make a mistake, tell me and let's get it figured out, because sometimes they make a mistake because of the environment that I'm creating. And I need to know that.
And one of the things, and this is something that I brought from Micron, because when we would hire people at Micron, the first thing I would tell them is my new employees, who are often PhDs or engineers, people with a lot of experiences, first of all, you're going to make mistakes, and we all know you're going to make mistakes. Second of all mistakes are correctable. So own up to it. Let's fix it. And third, it is unlikely you will be able to make a mistake that has not already been made either by me or someone else here. That's not a challenge, but it's just an honest, we've all done things. I have gone home from the store and realized I forgot to lock the door and had to drive back to the store and lock the door. So I can't get upset if I have an employee who owns up to it and says, hey, I think I left the door unlocked. I know you live 3 minutes away from the store. I know it's 10 o'clock at night. Would you mind? Yep. I'd much rather have that employee call me
than have someone wandering in.
Than have somebody wandering in.
Yep.
I've had employees say, I made a mistake with this customer. How do I fix it? Because customer service is very important, and you'd rather have an employee tell you they made a mistake, own up to it.
You would indeed.
Then have that customer see you in the street and say, hey, Bob, how come I haven't seen you in the store in 6 months? And like, well, one of your employees...
X, Y, and
X, Y, and
Z. You're just like, oh goodness!
Because
and how many times would that have happened to somebody? And that's where it gets into a real issue.
It gets into a real issue, and again, all problems are fixable. And in the moment, sometimes the problem seems huge, but if you've got a team also that's dedicated to making it better, you might not even have to solve the problem. One of your employees might say, "Oh man, I think I messed this up," and someone else will say, "Oh, we've done that before, and this is how you fix it."
Yep, good.
A lot of the problems.
Experience.
But it's a culture that grows. You can't just create that culture. You have to believe in that kind of culture and foster it. Because telling people it's okay to tell me about mistakes, the first time you yell at somebody for making a mistake when they've told you about they shut down. So again, it's on you and it's on your management team. And I highly recommend, if you're starting a business, even if you're starting with just 1 or 2 people, that you go into it with a plan of how are you going to have a management team? How are you going to grow someone to be a store manager? How are you going to grow someone to be, to take some of those things off of your plate, because you can't do anything new until somebody else can do the things that you do.
So one of the concepts that I really enjoyed hearing from Matt Rissell, who grew T-Sheets into one of the larger businesses we have here in Idaho, sold it to Intuit, and tried to retire, and that did not work for him at all. And so he immediately came back into Summit Partners as an entrepreneur in residence. One of the best advice nuggets that I got from him was fire yourself. And he literally said, sit in a chair, talk to the empty chair in front of you, get up, go and sit in that chair, and then talk as though you're the opposing side of that, to fire yourself out of those situations.
And the way I look at it is, if you are so vital to what you're doing...
We're actually going to put a pause here for just a second. We're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be back. You're listening to The Voice of Business with Nicholas Jones. Welcome back to The Voice of Business with Nicholas Jones. I am interviewing Bruce DeLaney with Rediscovered Books, and we were just talking about firing yourself, and Bruce was giving us some little nuggets here.
I was going to make a point. It's not even that. If you are so vital to what you do that you can't take a day or 2 away, you're never taking a vacation. I love being able to trust my staff to do all of the things that need to be done, enough that my wife and I can go to Ashland with the family for a week and watch Shakespeare plays. Is something that we truly enjoy.
About 6 years ago, I found myself in a situation where I realized that my business entity that I had created had grown a bit out of my control, because I always liked to be involved in the hiring. I always liked to be involved in the firing, because I didn't want to fire somebody before we really needed to. I let things go too far on some occasions where I really should have just let somebody go. But it was hard for me to get to that point. I had one day where I woke up in the morning and I got a text message from Sam and Rob, and they'd said, hey, we fired such and such for this reason. And at that point, I realized that things had gotten bigger than it could be just me. And it forced me into a situation where I had to step back and go, hey, maybe I'm micromanaging, maybe I'm doing too much. Like, I need to create more autonomy for my employees. I had 2 great employees, Sam and Rob, and they made a judgment call where they said, hey, we're going to do this. where it was outside of really the framework that I had given them. But I realized that that framework that I had given them shouldn't have been there. And so I actually started about 5 years ago going down a path where I increased autonomy for my employees. I did what I could to increase their trust level with me so I could end up with more Sams and more Robs.
Yeah.
Because that was key. And that was one of the best decisions that I could have made. And what I started to do was I started to realize I can't go on a vacation. If I go away today, if I get hit by a car, my entire family's future is gone because nobody can run it. There's people who step in and it's just a mess.
And it's something that's hard for a lot of small businesses because you start out and typically, you're starting with not very many employees. You're putting in a lot of time because you're the one who knows how everything is. But from the beginning, Laura and I had a plan on how we wanted to expand. And if you look at it, in 15 years, we have moved from the bench to downtown. We expanded the downtown store, so we doubled the floor space there. We purchased Once and Future Books, which was an ongoing business that we thought we could continue running really well as a business. And then last November, we opened another store in Caldwell.
Over in Indian Creek.
Yeah, over in Indian Creek, which is
a fantastic location.
If you have not been to Indian Creek and eaten at Amano's or the Chop Shop or any of the stores down there, it is a fantastic place to go. But we've had a plan for a number of years, and part of that plan is growing your employees. And I recommend, as much as sometimes I don't love reading business books or going to seminars, read business books, go to seminars. You're not as good of a manager as you think you are. And you can always get better.
100% agree. I have conversation with myself in the mirror on a regular basis. I have 2 standing appointments that I do every morning before I go on a bike ride, where I have a discussion with myself in the mirror and actually really kind of ask myself questions like that, because I've come to realize that I am not as good as I think I am. I came into this with a real high value of myself, and then when I really start to look at other people, I go, wow, I'm nowhere near as good as that person.
Sometimes running your own business can be very humbling, and I'm very lucky in that my Laura and I have been married now for 30 years. We just celebrated our anniversary. We have been business partners now for 18 years. And we truly enjoy what we do. So we get up in the morning, we have a cup of coffee, we talk about our day. We try to work in the same place at least a couple of days a week, although it's not always possible when you have multiple locations. And we're really good about keeping each other honest and trying to make sure that we are growing not just as business people, but as a couple. And it's not something that every business partnership gets to do. But I feel blessed in the fact that I get to run a business with my best friend.
You guys came into this business with a bit of an advantage because you took 3 years to figure out really what you want to do. You came in it to something that you're both passionate about. So right then and there, you've already set yourself down the path for success. It doesn't always work out that way with husband and team type of businesses. But even though you're going down the same path of something you're passionate about, I'm sure there's tensions and difficulties that arise. For this, we're running out of time, and for the last little bit, what I want to talk with you about specifically is how you have made your husband and wife team work for 18 years. It hasn't resulted in a divorce. You're still together. It hasn't resulted in a divorce of business where you're still working together and functioning well. What specific steps have you taken to make it so that your husband and wife dynamic within the business is successful?
And part of it is taking it beyond just husband and wife, because I think the lessons that we have are lessons that every set of business partners has to have. If you're going to have a business partner, you have to trust them. You have to trust them completely. They're going to make decisions when you're not there. One of the things that we did very early is we divided out the responsibilities. So I'm responsible for inventory management. Laura is responsible for personnel management. And those have shifted some over the years as things have come and gone. But we try to have a very clear delineation over who gets the final say in any specific business thing. So if it's a personnel thing, Laura gets the final say. So if she wants to hire somebody and I'm kind of wishy-washy and the team is on her side, we hire that person. If it's a financial thing or an inventory thing, I get the final say, but we have to have that conversation, and the level of trust that we have as having, being married for years before we did that, meant we came into it with the trust that a lot of business partners have to grow.
And one of the things that you mentioned that I really want to hit on real quick, in any business, there has to be a person in charge. And that sometimes can create a difficult dynamic in a husband and wife team. Mm-hmm. If you have a CEO and a COO, and the CEO is always telling the wife what to do within a business, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So what you did naturally is one of the best pieces of advice I can give to a husband and wife team. You divide up responsibilities, financial, team. And if you call the shot on that financial part, that it goes. There has to be someone at a final say.
But you're going to have that as a discussion. And the other thing is, you have to keep boundaries. You have to remember at the end of the day that the business is a business and the marriage is a marriage, and there has to be at least some ability to say, let's not talk about business now. We have to make our menu for this week and go shopping. Or, we have 2 children. We need to talk about what Gwen is going to do for college, or what Dennis is going to do for what we're going to buy the kids for Christmas, or those sorts of things. But in any business, having that level of trust with your employees and with your partners is what I think ultimately leads you to be able to make the difficult decisions. And as we know, there's been a lot of difficult decisions that have been made by all businesses over the last few months.
Even with this apocalypse that's going on, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made.
Yeah, and a lot of supply chain issues, a lot of things that we would not have thought. I'll give a great example. In January, we had 30 live, in-person, bring people into the store and sit down and have an author or play reading series, story time over at Guru Donuts, all these things that we did in person. Now those things are happening online, and so we've had to make difficult decisions on how to make some of those transitions and how to continue to be able to be the people that we are.
And when you go home, what advice would you give to somebody for the ability to turn off business? You
can never turn it off, but my advice is have a routine for when you get home of, I'm going to get home, I'm going to empty out my briefcase or whatever it is that you're carrying your things around in. I typically will take 5 or 10 minutes and just relax. And this is no different from when I was at Micron. I did exactly the same thing. I would come home. You kind of have to let that go. Laura bike commutes whenever she can. And so she's got that bike ride from the store to home to kind of, again, get yourself out of that. I'm at the store, I'm in the business mentality, and get back to the, I'm going to be at home. And for us, one of the first things we do when we can get home is, hey, let's talk about dinner. Because it's something that every family does every day, and you make that part of the routine, and it pulls you out of the business and puts you at the home.
So the routine that you guys have established, whether it's Laura's bike ride or it's you coming home, sitting down for a second, you're literally creating a divide. You're pulling yourself a little bit away, making an active, conscious decision.
And my bet is your bike ride in the morning is a similar thing. You're like, I was at home, I'm going to take my bike ride. When the bike ride is over, I'm working.
Well, perfect. I appreciate you coming out, Bruce, and for
thank
everyone
you so much
listening,
for having me.
Please head over to to voiceofbusiness.com. No the at the beginning, just voiceofbusiness.com. And also, when you get a chance, head over to Bruce's site. What website can they go to?
So it's rdbooks.org, or the best thing is to come to Caldwell, come to Boise, come see us. We're open for browsing even now, and we would love to have you come in so we can talk to you about books.
All right. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Nick.
You've listened to The Voice of Business with Nicholas Jones. Have a great Saturday morning, everyone.